Welcome back to the Republican presidential debate live from Milwaukee. Let's get back to the questions, and we want to touch on, obviously, one of the biggest of this issue in this year, taxes. And this will go to several of you. One of the biggest economic concerns, of course, in the country are taxes. Facebook data certainly backs that up. Once again, the green on this map that we're going to see here shows how the conversation around taxes is resonating across the nation, especially here in Wisconsin. First off, Dr. Carson, to you. You say you are in favor of a tax system, I guess, akin to tithing, sir, with a flat tax rate of up to 15%, because you said, if everybody pays this, I think God is a pretty fair guy, so tithing is a pretty fair process. But Donald Trump says that is not fair, that wealthier taxpayers should pay a higher rate because it's a fair thing to do. So whose plan would God endorse then, Doctor? Yours or Mr. Trump's?
Well, you know, when I say tithing, I'm talking about the concept of proportionality.
Right.
Everybody should pay the same proportion of what they make. You make $10 billion, you pay $1 billion. You make $10, you pay $1. You get the same rights and privileges. I don't see how anything gets a whole lot fairer than that. But you also have to get rid of all the deductions and all the loopholes, because that's the thing that tilts it in one direction or another. And you have to set the rate at an appropriate level. Now, I will say that there are a lot of people who say if you get rid of the deductions, you ruin the American dream because, you know, home mortgage deduction. But the fact of the matter is, people had homes before 1913 when we introduced the federal income tax, and later after that started deductions. And they say there'll be no more charitable giving. We had churches before that and charitable organizations before that. The fact of the matter is, I believe if you put more money in people's pockets, that they will actually be more generous rather than less generous. And it's the money that they earn. And the other thing is, I do care about the poor people. And in the system that we're putting together, there will be a rebate for people at the poverty level. But I also want to emphasize the fact that as we get the economy moving, and I hope I get a question about how do we get the economy moving, there will be a lot more opportunities for poor people not to be poor people. Because this is America, this is the land of dreams, and our policies should be aimed at allowing people to realize that dream.
Thank you very much. Senator Paul, you said you want to blow up the tax code and start over with an across-the-board 14.5% fair and flat tax. You happily offer that it is not revenue neutral, and that's the idea. You want to choke off the amount of money coming into Washington. But don't you risk, sir, creating a near-term budget crisis, just as your presidency would be beginning?
Well, it's a great question, Neil, and thanks for including me in the tax debate. I think what's important about the tax debate is that we have to ask the question, where is money best spent? In the private sector and the government sector. I want a government really, really small. So small you can barely see it. So I want lower taxes and much more money in the private sector. My tax plan, however, is the only tax plan among any of the candidates on the stage that is part of a balanced budget plan. I put forward 3 plans that actually balance the budget over a 5-year period. Each of these plans have details on exactly where we'd cut. The question came up earlier, where would you cut? Nobody likes to say where they would cut. I've put pencil to paper and done 3 budgets that actually balance. I'm also in favor of a plan called the penny plan, where we'd just cut 1% across the board, and that budget actually balances in less than 5 years. So I think what's extraordinary about my tax plan is it is in the context of balancing the budget. What's also extraordinary about my tax plan is it gets rid of the payroll tax. Democrats demagogue this issue to death, and when they do, they say, oh, a millionaire would get a bigger tax cut than someone making $10,000. That's proportionality, as Ben's trying to explain to folks. But the thing is if we get rid of the payroll tax, everybody's going to get a tax cut. And this is something that I think the public at large will support and could win an election.
There are no deductions under your plan?
Ours is 14.5% for corporations, 14.5% for individuals, no payroll tax for the employee, the business tax pays for Social Security, and there would be 2 remaining deductions, home mortgage and charity.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you.
Senator Cruz, there isn't anyone in this audience or watching at home tonight who would not like to pay less in taxes. Most people just want a fair shake, and they don't want their money to be wasted. But explain how your plan works. How can you cut taxes as much as you propose without running up debt and deficits?
Well, sure, and you put your finger on what the problem is. The current system isn't fair. Washington is fundamentally corrupt. There are more words in the IRS code than there are in the Bible. And not a one of them is as good. Every one of them reflects a carve-out or a subsidy, and it's all about empowering the Washington cartel. My simple flat tax says that for a family of 4, for the first $36,000 you earn, you pay no taxes whatsoever. No income taxes, no payroll taxes, no nothing. Above that, every American pays 10% across the board, a flat, fair tax, which means that no longer do you have hedge fund billionaires paying a lower tax rate than their secretaries. On the business side, I've got a business flat tax of 16%. Again, that applies across the board. Right now, with our corporate income tax, giant corporations with armies of accountants regularly are paying little to no taxes while small businesses are getting hammered. This is fair and across the board. Now, you ask, how do the numbers add up? I would encourage folks, if you go to our website, tedcruz.org, we have the specific numbers on the website. This plan eliminates the payroll tax, eliminates the death tax, eliminates the corporate income tax, and it abolishes the IRS. And the effect of that is incredible economic growth. It means every income group will see double-digit increases from the very poorest to the very weakest of at least 14%. So if you're a single mom, if you're making $40,000 a year, what that means is an extra about $5,000 in your pocket to provide for your kids, to make ends meet. It has a powerful, powerful effect. And there's one other really powerful feature of my plan, which is that it's border adjustable, which means if you're an exporter, if you're a farmer, if you're a rancher, if you're a manufacturer, you don't pay the business flat tax. Exports are free of that tax, but all imports pay that 16% business flat tax, which means this tax plan would cause jobs to boom, and it would let America compete with China and the world on a level playing field.
But you haven't told us how to pay for it.
Well, the numbers the Tax Foundation have put out is that the static cost of the plan is $3.6 trillion over 10 years. But the dynamic cost of the plan, which is the cost that factors in growth, is about $768 billion. It is less than $1 trillion. It costs less than virtually every other plan people have put up here, and yet it produces more growth, and it's one of the very few plans that abolishes the IRS. But on top of that, today, we rolled out a spending plan, $500 billion in specific cuts, 5 major agencies that I would eliminate: the IRS, the Department of Commerce, the Department of Energy, the Department of Commerce, and HUD. And then 25 specific programs. Again, that's on our website at tedcruz.org. You want to look at specificity? It's easy for everyone to say, cut spending. It's much harder and riskier to put out chapter and verse, specifically the programs you would cut to stop bankrupting our kids and grandkids.
Thank you, Senator. Governor Bush, Republican primary voters say tax reform should be a priority for Congress and the administration. But Governor Bush, how important is tax reform in your domestic policy agenda? Will you guarantee it in the first year of your presidency?
I'm going to fight as hard as I can to make sure that we shift power away from Washington, simplify the tax code to spur economic activity in this country. Of course it's the highest priority. If we don't do that, we're stuck with the new normal of 2% growth. Hillary Clinton says, basically, we just got to get used to it. 2% growth means declining income for the middle class. It means more than 6 million people are stuck in poverty than the day that Barack Obama was inaugurated. It means more demands on government. Growing the economy is the first job if we're going to be serious about dealing with the deficit and debt. And more importantly, people are really struggling right now. In this economy, the disposable income of the great middle is down $2,300. So yeah, we've created jobs, Gerard, you brought that up early it was a good question. Jobs are being created, but they're lower income jobs than the jobs that were lost. And the net effect of this is we need to jumpstart the economy. I think of Jonathan and Reagan Love, who are supporters of mine. Jonathan has been deployed by the National Guard. He's in Oklahoma. Reagan Love, by the way, pretty great name, I think, is a teacher. If they had this tax cut, what they told me was that $2,300 of money in their pocket, they would go back to South Carolina and start a business. Imagine what it would be like, instead of having more businesses closed than started, we had the exact opposite. We would grow our economy, and the government would get the revenue necessary to make things better. Hillary Clinton's approach to this is more top-down, more regulation, more taxes, more government, and it will destroy our economy.
Thank you.
Thank you, Governor.
Senator Rubio. Can I just come to Senator Rubio? We're coming to you, Mr. Trump, in 1 second, I promise. Senator Rubio, your tax plan includes a large expansion of child tax credits to raise after-tax incomes for low-income parents. A similar tax credit that you previously proposed in the Senate was estimated to cost as much as $170 billion a year, according to the Tax Foundation. Isn't there a risk that you're just adding another expensive entitled program to an already overburdened federal budget?
The most important job I'm ever going to have, the most important job anyone in this room will ever have, is the job of being a parent. Not the job of being president, or the job of being a senator, or the job of being a congressman. The most important job any of us will ever do is the job of being a president, because the most important institution in society is the family. If the family breaks down, society breaks down. You can't have a strong nation without strong values, and no one is born with strong values. They have to be taught to you in strong families and reinforced in you in strong communities. And so when we set out to do tax reform, we endeavored to have a pro-family tax code. And we endeavored to do it because we know how difficult it is for families in the 21st century to afford the cost of living. It is expensive to raise children in the 21st century. And families that are raising children are raising the future taxpayers of the United States. And everything costs more. In 35 out of 50 states, child care costs more than college. There are millions of people watching this broadcast tonight that understand exactly what I'm talking about. They don't know how they're going to make that payment every month. And if they can't make it, they can't work because someone needs to watch their kids during the day. They don't know how they're going to save for their kids' future to go to college. And so, yes, I have a child tax credit increase, and I'm proud of it. I am proud that I have a pro-family tax code, because the pro-family tax plan I have will strengthen the most important institution in the country, the family.
Neil, there's a point I'd like to make here. Neil, a point that I'd like to make about the tax credits. We have to decide what is conservative and what isn't conservative. Is it fiscally conservative to have $1 trillion expenditure? We're not talking about giving people back their tax money. He's talking about giving people money they didn't pay. It's a welfare transfer payment. So here's what we have. Is it conservative to have $1 trillion in transfer payments, a new welfare program that's a refundable tax credit? Add that to Marco's plan for $1 trillion in new military spending, and you get something that looks to me not very conservative.
Thank you. Governor Casey.
No,
Let me come to Governor Casey.
No,
Governor Casey.
Excuse me, I get to respond.
Very quickly, Senator.
No, I get my 60 seconds to respond. He's talking about my tax plan.
Please.
So let me begin with this. I actually believe, first of all, this is their money. They do pay. It is refundable, not just against the taxes they pay to the government, but also on their federal income tax. It's refundable against the payroll tax. Everyone pays payroll tax. This is their money. This is not our money. And here's what I don't understand. If you invest that money in a piece of equipment, if you invest that money in a business, you get to write it off your taxes. But if you invest it in your children, in the future of America, in strengthening your family, we're not going to recognize that in our tax code. The family is the most important institution in
Nevertheless,
society.
it's not
and yes,
very
I do want to rebuild the
Marco.
American military.
How's it conservative?
I know that Rand is a committed isolationist. I'm not. I believe the world is a stronger and a better place when the United States is the strongest military power in the world.
Marco, how is it conservative? How is it conservative to add $1 trillion expenditure for the federal government that you're not paying for? How is it conservative? How is it conservative to add $1 trillion in military expenditures? You cannot be a conservative if you're going to keep promoting new programs that you're not going to pay for.
I may respond more quickly. Very quickly, Senator. We can't even have an economy if we're not safe. There are radical jihadists in the Middle East beheading people and crucifying Christians. A radical Shia cleric in Iran trying to get a nuclear weapon. The Chinese taking over the South China Sea. Yes, I believe the world is a safer... No, I don't believe. I know that the world is a safer and better place when America is the strongest military power in the world.
Marco, I don't think we're any safer. I do not think we are any safer from bankruptcy court. As we go further and further into debt, we become less and less safe. This is the most important thing we're going to talk about tonight. Can you be a conservative and be liberal on military spending? Can you be for unlimited military spending and say, oh, I'm going to make the country safe? No, we need a safe country. But you know, we spend more on our military than the next 10 countries combined. I want a strong national defense, but I don't want us to be bankrupt.
Well, and there is a middle ground. There is a middle ground that brings both of these together. There is a middle ground that brings both of these together, which is that it is exactly right that we have to defend this nation. You think defending this nation is expensive, try not defending it. That's a lot more expensive, but you can do that and pay for it. You can do that and also be fiscally responsible. You know, I mentioned that the 25 programs that I put out today that I would eliminate them. Among them are corporate welfare like sugar subsidies. Let's take that as an example. Sugar subsidies. Sugar farmers farm on roughly 0.2% of the farmland in America, and yet they give 40% of the lobbying money. That sort of corporate welfare is why we're bankrupting our kids and grandkids. I would end those subsidies to pay for defending this nation.
Senator, we need to move on.
This is why we must combine, actually, zero-based budgeting with tax reform. Because unless we can examine and cut and move every single dollar of discretionary spending in the federal government, we cannot reform taxes and reduce spending at the same time. Ask yourself this question. How is it possible that the federal government gets more money each and every year, which the federal government has been doing, receiving more money every year for 50 years under Republicans and Democrats alike, and yet never has enough money to do the important things? The answer, all the money's always spoken for. All the money's spoken for. So we have to go to zero-based budgeting, which is a simple idea. By the way, there's been a bill for zero-based budgeting. It exists. It can be voted on. Every dollar must be examined. Any dollar can be cut. Any dollar can be moved. We have to go to a 3-page tax code. You lower every rate. You close every loophole. Why? Because the government uses the tax code to decide winners and losers. You have to strip the corruption out of the tax code to pay for it. You have to know where every single dollar is being spent. So you can cut where you need to and invest where you need to. The two go hand in hand.
We do need to move on. Mr. Trump, the U.S. has just...
if I might,
very quickly.
We have to make our military bigger, better, stronger than ever before so that nobody messes with us, and in the long run, it's going to save us. I agree with Marco. I agree with Ted. We have no choice. And I can say this with certainty. We all have a different tax plan. Some I don't totally agree with. One thing we understand, each one of those tax plans is better than the mess that we have right now.
Let's talk about Mr. Trump. No, Governor, I really must move on. I want to move on. Mr. Trump, let's talk about the international economy. The U.S. has recently concluded... Governor, please, we really need to move on.
I think you were coming to me until
Governor, I promised I would come to you.
Look, I hate to crash the party, Mr. Baker, but, you know, it's fair.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Trump, can I ask you about the U.S. has just concluded an international trade agreement with 11 countries in the Pacific. You've said that you'd rather have no deal than sign the one that's on the table.
It's a horrible
most
deal.
Economists say that trade has boosted growth, and every single post-war president has supported the expansion of international trade, including the last 3 Republican presidents. Why would you reverse more than 50 years of U.S. trade policy?
The TPP is a horrible deal. It is a deal that is going to lead to nothing but trouble. It's a deal that was designed for China to come in, as they always do, through the back door and totally take advantage of everyone. It's 5,600 pages long. so complex that nobody's read it. It's like Obamacare. Nobody ever read it. They passed it. Nobody read it. Had to look at the mess we have right now, and it will be repealed. But this is one of the worst trade deals, and I would, yes, rather not have it. With all of these countries and all of the bad ones getting advantage and taking advantage of what the good ones would normally get, I'd rather make individual deals with individual countries. We will do much better. We lose a fortune on trade. The United States loses with everybody. We're losing now over $500 billion in terms of imbalance with China, $75 billion a year imbalance with Japan. By the way, Mexico, $50 billion a year imbalance. So I must say, Gerard, I just think it's a terrible deal. I love trade. I'm a free trader 100%. But we need smart people making the deals, and we don't have smart people making the deals.
The deal, as you say, the terms of the deal were published just last week, the detailed 5,000 pages of it. And 80% of U.S. trade with countries in the Pacific, these countries, these 11 countries, is actually tariff-free. And the trade deal only affects the other 20%. Which are there particular parts of the deal that you think
well, the
were
currency
badly
manipulation they don't discuss in the agreement, which is a disaster. If you look at the way China and India and almost everybody takes advantage of the United States, China in particular, because they're so good. It's the #1 abuser of this country. And if you look at the way they take advantage, it's through currency manipulation. It's not even discussed in the almost 6,000-page agreement. It's not even discussed.
There was a separate,
and as you understand, I mean, you understand very well from the Wall Street Journal, currency manipulation is the single great weapon people have. They don't even discuss it in this agreement. So I say it's a very bad deal, should not be approved. If it is approved, it'll just be more bad trade deals, more loss of jobs for our country. We are losing jobs like nobody's ever lost jobs before. I want to bring jobs back into this country.
Hey, Gerard, you know, we might want to point out China's not part of this deal.
Yeah. True. It's true. Yeah.
That's right. That's right.
Before we get a little bit off kilter,
isn't that part of the problem, if I may say, Senator, that if this deal is not ratified by the US, by the Senate, then it would actually give China an opportunity to grow its economic leadership, which it's been seeking to do. And if the US is unable to take part in this trade deal with these countries in Asia, China will take the lead.
There is an argument that China doesn't like the deal because in us doing the deal, we'll be trading with their competitors. You're exactly right. But I think we've sort of missed the point a little bit here. There is an important point, though, about how we discuss these trade treaties that I do agree with Mr. Trump on. We should negotiate from a position of strength, and we also should negotiate using the full force and the constitutional power that was given to us. I think it's a mistake that we give up power to the presidency on these trade deals. We give up the power to filibuster, and I'm kind of fond of that power. We give up the power to amend. And I think really one of the big problems we have in our country is over the last century, really, so much power has gravitated to the executive branch. Really, Congress is kind of a bystander. We don't write the rules. We don't make the laws. The executive branch does. So even in trade, and I am for trade, I think we should be careful about giving so much power to the presidency.
Thank you. Thanks, Senator.
Coming up, the biggest threats facing the next commander-in-chief. You're watching the Republican presidential debate live tonight from Milwaukee.